going on in the cities. So in the short term, I know it feels like it's going to take for ages, but we will go back into the cities, into offices, and I'll touch on that a bit further later on. Yes, into some more retail, but perhaps less of it, and into hospitality. I do think actually hospitality will see quite a significant boom, actually, and so there'll be quite a lot of interest, and I think a lot of innovation will come because the traditional high streets normally occupiers and users can't get into the best units because they're all literally taken by the mainstream. But I think there's kind of an opportunity for a lot of independents to kind of rise and come out the back of their kind of cabin or hutch or something where they've been incubating an idea and actually take a unit on the high street and kind of develop that up into something. One of the key points we had at JLL was, a lot of our cities are actually there, and the growth will be driven by it's the younger generation. Now I'm looking at you guys, and you're all so young, but I mean, when I say young, our research meant below 35. Okay, so you can see the percentage there in London, 47%, and Manchester, 44%, where the average is about 35%. So a lot of growth in the cities will come from the younger population driving back into their spaces and kind of connecting up, because there hasn't really been, despite Teams and Zoom and everything else, no one's really found a better way of enjoying themselves and coming together. So we still see that being a driving force. But what is happening is you're seeing obviously various things affect the way there's more flexibility now. A lot of this is driven by technology. So both into consumer space and flexibility. Technology is obviously allowing increasingly to be more, all of three of those really, in terms of kind of evolving those. So under the flexibility bit, we're just kind of seeing where people are going to work and live in different places to the traditional way. I go home to live and I go to work to work. That's obviously getting increasingly blurred. In terms of space, when you look at the living product, given what you guys do and are hoping to do and impact around planning particularly, the living area is quite, as we call it, resi, is changing quite a lot, and consumers are demanding different things from their homes. Particularly we're seeing developers changing bedroom numbers and kind of putting home working space and what have you in terms of their marketing and what they do, broadband speeds and other issues being kind of really important. Interestingly as well, I'll pick up this a bit later, commuting times can actually go up as well because you might not be in the office as much. So you can actually, those places that are a little bit further off the beaten track might become more popular because people are prepared to commute for longer for a couple of days a week, but the rest of the time they might be at home in a better space. And then obviously in terms of consumers, I think the drive really is retail reducing, obviously. We're seeing kind of shopping isn't for a necessity, it's for experience. So that's going to change the mix that you're seeing. And the last one there on the left is really just accepting that there is, with politically and from a government point of view, there are measures really to try and level up our economy across the UK. So we will see, particularly in the Midlands and the North, define the North, but I'll just say the North, there's a lot of money, and I'll flick slides now. So this is almost the same document, but slightly different. So as you said, so you can see so there's about 4 billion being spent in our cities outside of London on transport in particular, which is going to really make changes within our cities and that levelling up with London, essentially, a little more. So all of that comes together to mean that you've kind of got our urban spaces having to reinvent themselves. So I'll touch on those in a couple of places next. But I mean, particularly retail. So we're seeing, I think the predictions from our research is that there'll be 80,000 less shops in our cities by the end of 2030. COVID has basically just speeded that process up. I think this year alone, we've lost 20,000. So it's pretty big. And that's going to continue. There is obviously going to be a repurposing of particularly retail, but also some offices, particularly secondary offices, that are either secondary because their specification isn't very good and can't be uplifted. So in those cases, I mean probably buildings that aren't green enough or can't be made green enough and sustainable enough, and also those that are in a poor location from an office point of view, they will get marginalised and be left for redevelopment. Now, as planners, that's going to mean you're going to end up with the traditional model of that's where you go to shop, that's where you go to work, and that's where you go to live is going to get blurred, and you'll have more mixed communities. And there is a lot of talk about kind of 15, 20-minute walkable communities as well. I don't know if you guys have looked at stuff like that, but that is actually at the moment. I challenged someone the other day and said, who's talking about that? And I think it's most of the experts, no one else. So we'll wait and see whether local authorities, planning authorities, etc., make that more a reality. But I think what we will see out of this, because people will be working from home a little bit more, that will mean certain communities will have suburbs, perhaps in some locations, not all of them, some of them that are near transport hubs and what have you, will see an uplift in amenities and improvements, and sort of the spreading of that CPD out across the city, really, kind of affecting that. And I suppose the other bit is we need more homes. I've been working for like 20, 30 years. We've always needed more homes. But I think JLL's view is that if you look at the government targets, we need, in the next 5 years, we think that the communities need another 750,000 more houses than those government targets. So it's a huge demand out there. The repurposing of some of these spaces will largely actually fall to residential and perhaps higher density. So I'm happy to kind of chat about that and not take any questions from you guys around that. Before I move off the slide, the other point I'd make out is a lot of local authorities are getting their head around sustainable economic kind of recovery, really, and looking at how they can kind of take a particular area as a whole and create more public-private partnerships. So where the local authority, they might have the land, but they don't have the expertise, and they'll link up with developers who've got the right values. That's particularly important, who can then work together in partnership to create the right communities we want in our cities. The trick here is understanding the commercials. It's all very fanciful saying we'll just draw on a plan where we want stuff, but if it's not viable and can't be delivered. But if you're dealing with it at a quarter of the city, sections of the city, or whatever, and you can balance up. You might end up with more green space, which obviously detracts from in the capital receipts point of view. But that might, if you own all the land around that, and you can build a little higher in those locations to get your value back, you can make more money on that. But people are going to come there and pay more for that flat because it overlooks a park. It's pretty straightforward. But if you deal with it as in isolation, as individual plots, it can be difficult to extract that through the planning process. When you bring it together as in those partnerships, you can. So I think we'll see more of that. And there is one of the other points I wanted to make was for you guys to understand is there is a lot of money out there that wants to find the right home. So ESG, environmental, social, and governance kind of finance is now cheaper to acquire for developers and investors. If you can meet those objectives, then there's a lot of money out there that wants to be seen to be doing the right thing. And so when we say patient capital, we mean a lot of money wants to get in, do a scheme, build it, flog it, get their money out and make their profit in 2 or 3 years. Patient capital might be, we're going to sign up with a local authority, work with this, slowly build out a plan, and it's a 15-year plan. And that's pretty patient. But when you've got pension funds who are patient money by their very nature, getting interested and involved in this, that's when you can start kind of getting perhaps a bit of more healthy balance between those short, quick solutions perhaps, but then some others need to be longer, kind of slow, complicated, balancing out approaches, which is encouraging. So that was a rattle through kind of that city evolve kind of slides. I just touch on the sectors, and then I'll stop for questions and queries and stuff from you guys. So Debenhams no more. So I kind of show that up there really in the sense of the context of where is retail. It's arguable retail has reached the bottom. Has it reached the bottom in terms of Debenhams and Arcadia going? I think there's more. We think there's more distress to continue, but we are starting to get to that equilibrium quicker because of COVID. I think there's going to be a kind of quite a cull on the fashion brands side, and as I said earlier, it's going to be less about buying goods than going in to experience something. So those shops that survive are going to be very much about intense kind of focus on service, expert knowledge, and experience, because you've got to provide something different than just clicking and getting it delivered by Amazon. Clearly. What else is to say about? I suppose green recovery as well. That will be as a theme will run through all of this. So those retailers that are focused around sustainability are going to succeed better. We see a growth, particularly in that kind of recycling, reselling, renting of goods. That market becoming far more popular and mainstream. And I guess where are the winners and losers? I suppose those kind of London South East, best university towns, no real surprise. Those are sort of kind of some of the cities that are going to kind of do well. Those locations, maybe you've got a smaller supermarket anchored to a shopping centre. Maybe some strategically located retail parks. We're seeing, and I'll come on to it maybe in logistics, some of the poorer quality retail parks being potentially snapped up to turn them into logistics to service our needs for 1 hour deliveries, etc., and to be more, hopefully more environmentally friendly as well. So those kind of urban hubs becoming where basically the parcels are delivered by electric carts and by a postie, rather than millions of white vans turning up and down the street delivering the same parcel, but and somebody else turns up straight afterwards and does it again. And one local example I'll give on retail, which I think is quite typical of it's symbolic of what's happening. Of what's happening is Clifton. I don't know if anyone knows it, but Clifton Shopping Centre. That was purchased recently by Sovereign Housing Association. So here you've got an affordable housing association buying quite a prime shopping centre. And their entire intention with that is it's a prime site. So you're buying, retail is so relatively cheap that you can buy a shopping centre which is in a strategic location with a view to in the next 5 to 6 years, essentially putting 300, 400 flats on the back of it, making money out of that and reducing the amount of retail content. So that's a live example of kind of what we'll see more happening in our cities. I'll move off retail. So death of office, no. So I think we're definitely going to move to more hybrid solutions where people are obviously in the office, not all the time, but kind of varied. It is tricky though, because if you're an occupier and you own 20,000 square feet and your employees tell you want to come in only a few days, but they only want to come in, they all tell you they want to come in Tuesdays, Wednesdays and Thursdays and don't want to bother on Mondays and Fridays, you still need 20,000 square feet. So there's this idea of working flexibly, but if it means flexible doesn't seem very flexible to me when your employer tells you can come in on a Monday and someone else can come on a Thursday and you never meet. So there's quite a lot to work out here, is all I'd say, is a spot of caution. As journalists are printing a lot of articles and space writing about how the office is over, but actually it's certainly going to reduce and evolve into a more collaborative space and probably look more like a hotel foyer than an office. Yeah, so it's going to be it's kind of, those are sort of the directions it's going, and what you will see as well, which might seem a bit odd, is there probably will be quite a lot of new office buildings being built because the old ones don't match what the occupiers need. particularly when it comes to sustainability. There's a lot of old, dirty buildings. But there, as I'm sure you're looking at, lies the rub in terms of, at the moment, we're just in that space where the market is starting to deliver net zero carbon buildings. We're doing one up in Edinburgh. We're doing a couple in London. We're using CLT timber in an office building just off Hyde Park. We're just starting to kind of proper commercial buildings, not just kind of one-off schemes which kind of someone's funded it. I mean, the ones that the intention is to make money and do the right thing from. At the same time, there's going to be a movement that will come through where, quite rightly, be challenged about embodied carbon. And why am I moving to a brand new office when actually I should probably making the current one I'm in greener by keeping the same frame and recycling and kind of using the same building. Just as recycling our clothes, we should be recycling our office buildings. What else is there to say about offices? I think that there will be take up of some of that surplus retail space by offices, as they kind of, because they're in such great locations. But some of them are quite difficult. If you've got a listed Debenhams in a city centre, which is quite deep and dark, it's quite difficult to make it work. So it's going to be a challenge for some of these. One thing which you may, I'm sure you're familiar with, but flex space as well is something that's going to become much more prevalent. So this is where you, as a landlord, you may take, let's just say, 60% of your needs you might sign a traditional lease of, and then the other 30% or so you might take as service space, flex space. So you've got more variety. You can move, and within the same building often as well. So the kind of structure of the building's kind of tenancy will change as well. I will. Right. If you want to look good in front of any real estate firms, then this is the phrase: beds and sheds. That's what it's all about now. Okay. That is basically, if it hasn't got a bed in it and it's not a shed, then you don't want it. So not particularly exciting beds, but sheds always used to be the bottom of the market. No one really very interested in them. Give you an example, the yield, so the investment performance on industrial units used to be sort of 8-9%. I'm averaging this out broadly, and retail was like 3-4%. So far more valuable retail. It has swung the other way around because we've all started buying everything online, and so it swung back the other way. And basically, you cannot fail but sell industrial units now for high yields, and everyone's clamoring over it. All the pension companies, all the money wants to get into it because it can see that's the future. The industry is very slow, sat there for 10 years looking at this happening. Some people got in there early, but last year it absolutely took off. So e-commerce has really rocketed up the kind of the importance of industrial, and at the same time, Brexit and the pandemic has challenged supply chains. So businesses were encouraged to run very, very lean. I'm making something in the Midlands and I need X and Y and wherever else. I can literally have it tomorrow delivered by wherever, from Belgium or somewhere else, from Brazil or wherever it's coming from. And the reality is Brexit and the pandemic has broken those supply chains. And so, simply put, Britain didn't have enough in its store cupboards. So it now needs more store cupboards, which are these industrial units. So there's going to be a lot more of those cropping up. When I talk about that, I've touched on it before, but urban logistics is that bit where you also hear the phrase last mile logistics. So it's those hubs in our centres which allows the operators, Hermes and others, FedEx, etc., to come together and distribute the packages. So ultimately, the idea being that you're only getting one or two deliveries, but from multiple occupiers, multiple retailers, if you know what I mean. So it's much more efficient and more environmentally friendly, because whilst you can justify not driving to an out-of-town shopping centre and you're getting your stuff delivered to you by van, when there's 10 vans driving down your street all the time, kind of delivering the stuff. It doesn't kind of make sense. And it's interesting that Amazon bought a very expensive car park in the city of London to essentially do exactly that. So every package that goes in there will then get delivered by electric cart or by person on foot in the city. And it reduces something like 83,000 vehicle movements or something ridiculous from this fairly small unit. But that's the kind of future. And going back to that repurposing, the fact that there's less retail, those values have reduced, means that those logistics buildings will be able to compete. It's all about competition for land and value. It's all well and good drawing it up on a plan and saying this is what would be great for my city, but the reality is no one's going to build one of those or put that in if it doesn't make money. On the bed side, I suppose I've touched on the fact that what people want from their space. They've all been cooped up in it on a couple of lockdowns now. And it's amazing, people want outdoor space. That I think they'll also, from a planning perspective, I think there'll be a greater recognition of public realm and higher. We don't do it very well in the UK, I would argue. We do in some of our cities, but not compared to perhaps Europe. It may be because we don't spend so much time in it, because it's blinking cold and windy, but compared to nice European southern cities. But nevertheless, I still think that outdoor space will get valued more by people, and then ultimately the simple fact is, if someone buys a flat in a block that's near nice public realm, then the next developer will build nice public realm and put the prices up, admittedly. But if it's valued, they will do it. Build to rent is just something. I don't know if you're familiar with build to rent. Does that mean anything to you guys? So build to rent is basically the model, which is you used to rent, be careful what I say here, from some dodgy landlord, or who owns a couple of houses, and that's what that's what you do. This is the professionalization of the rented sector. So this is where I, as a pension fund, build 300 flats. I manage them, I look after them, I care for you, I put you into a one bed, you meet someone, fall in love, and you want a 2-bed, and you start in the same block. There's a brand. If I move from London to Barcelona, I've moved from that one block that used to be a John Lewis style block, let's just say, to the same one that's in Barcelona. This is the kind of there's a lot of security in it, because landlords will own something and then go, I'm selling it, and kick their tenants out. This is a pension fund that's going to own this building forever. You could move in there and live there forever. So that build to rent sector, as it's called, otherwise known as PRS as well, just to confuse you, public rented sector. But build to rent is the kind of phrase that's now stuck. It's a new area of development, but it has advantages for the resi market, because as a developer, when you build 300 flats, you then have to sell them. And that takes time. You don't find 300 people overnight. You might sell 20 a month. It could take months for you to sell the whole block, and that hurts you in terms of financing schemes. Build to rent, you build it, and the rented community move in much quicker, much faster, less commitment, it's more flexible. They give you a lot more flexibility to move out, but you probably don't take it because you're quite happy being in it. The question is whether you'll pay more for that than the average unprofessional rented kind of house around the corner. And the future for that is, at the moment, those build-to-rent schemes have been targeted at people like you, leaving university, getting a good job, and wanting something nice, clean, and looked after. The next move will be to offer that to families and to people later living. So why would I go into a care home when I can come into the city, sell my house, and rent a really nice up together kind of space, and I could then move around. I could be there for 6 months and I'd go somewhere else. So this is that's a kind of set to watch. I'm conscious of time. How am I doing? I'll shut up in a minute and you can ask some questions. I think I've covered sustainability. I think all I'd say for you guys is that I've been looking at this for a long time and talking about it, and BREEAM assessments and planning and government initiatives to kind of will only take space if it's BREEAM excellent, etc. All that was great, but the reality is that finance, money has now swung, the pendulum swung the other way. It wants to invest in the stuff. Corporates get it. Hopefully, when you're choosing who you want to work with, you're probably going to be picking firms that are in the right buildings, doing the right thing. And that's why businesses themselves want to be in green buildings. What I would say, though, is that corporates are interested in sustainability, but at the moment they're particularly focused on the health and well-being of the building on its stuff, which is understandable given the circumstances we have been in recently. So that's me. That's what we do. That's where we are. And that's that. And I'll switch this off now so I can see your faces.
Thank you so much.
I'll stop presenting. That's all right. I hope that's going to be the right thing.
No, that was great, Simon. There was also some topics there that I was curious myself, even about the office as well. Yeah.
Well,
I just wonder as well how it would be to come back from. I feel like some people might be relieved to go back to the office from working from home, but.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how you guys are doing, but I know I was just talking to a colleague now. We're opening our offices 2 days a week on a kind of for well-being, really, to help people. And those that have gone in are absolutely loving it. We have to be careful because we don't want to be in there all the time. We're doing things sensibly, and I think that's the judge, in my view. But I think it will. I think there's a lot of uncertainty from everyone about how well we're all looking at each other. We're not quite sure how it's quite going to work out. So we'll see. We'll see. Come ask me again in a year's time.
Simon, I was wondering, do you think there will be like a rise in change of use, of office to housing or retail to housing in the next couple of years? Just because obviously you said that retail value's gone down significantly and people are kind of okay now working from home. What do you think about that in terms of the permitted development rights?
Yeah, well, it's interesting. I'm not a planner. You're the planners, but that PDR stuff is really obviously the government's on a roll here. It just keeps kind of basically what can I give PDR to next? I do this to this. We had a lot after the global financial crash. We had a lot of the easier buildings convert from offices to residential. So it's diminishing returns is what I would say, because certain buildings don't lend themselves to it. They're expensive, and also it's all well and good getting PDR, but actually probably some of these we want to go higher anyway. So you need to go. We're going to have just taking the Debenhams, for example, and going, well, we'll just convert the space into a bit. There will be more mixed use. So if I take a Debenhams example from Bristol, it's already been looked at. I think the council is selling it, and we're lining up developers for it. The ground floor will stay as retail. The first floor might be some offices, and then you might have the next floors as some kind of residential of some form, or maybe some co-living or something else. That's a kind of pattern that you might see for some of those. But I think the government seems to be enjoying playing with PDR to kind of speed up the planning process, doesn't it? Mm-hmm. So I think it's a trend that's just going to carry on. But it will have some consequences. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. Because in an ideal world, if you took the high street, if I take White Ladies Road, for example, and says, okay, then really we want the retail reduced, but we want it clustered up in the right location, and then the rest of it probably goes to residential. But if we end up with a whole smattering of resi next to shop, next to this, next to office, it probably could get a bit messy, to say the least. So I think I'd like you guys to come and sort it out, please. That would be good.
it's crazy how many like kind of change of users you're allowed now through PDR.
Once you can build a rabbit hutch, you can kind of build a kind of massive hotel or something. Once you just kind of work your way through the codes, that goes seat 3 to seat that to carry it back here. So it's like chess moves, and you end up, and we've just unwittingly we just got consent to a tab lock. No, I'm teasing.
Thank you.
I had a question. I was wondering what attributes are most attractive in a candidate trying to get a job in your organization, like an entry-level job?
Yeah, no, sure. So that's a good question. Can I answer it? Yeah, I can have a go. I would say it's behaviours. So what I'm saying that because traditionally it's been very kind of, does your face fit? Have you been to the right college? Did you do the right course? Did you have that has completely changed. Now, don't get me wrong, if I look around my senior team, there's still too many white faces, too many men, but it's changing quite fast. And it's quite painful, I have to say, actually, for some. Dinosaurs are kind of getting pushed out. They're voting, the dinosaurs are voting for their own extinction. That's the mildly amusing thing about it. But it's really changing fast. But coming back to your question, behaviours around kind of adaptability, you quite rightly right now, you're focusing on some real core technical skills. But for us as JLL, we're looking for people who can come in, look at that, but actually also connect and communicate. Really important to be able to kind of link up with people and communicate. And our business is successful by all the different services talking to each other and linking up and creating solutions for clients. It isn't by just being a really good planner, and that's what I do, and I'm going to focus on being the best planner ever in the world. That's great, but actually that's to miss the whole value and impact you can have with all the other. If you don't, that's why I've gone into stuff that's not really maybe your natural area, because it's all understanding the financial sides of it, the realities. That makes you a commercial planner. That makes you kind of you then start understanding how the whole process works. And who the right people are, and kind of linking into them within our business. So it's those behaviours and some of those skills around them, rather than just loads and loads of similar experience. And I would say we take on quite a lot of non-cogs as well. So it's not just a straight line, and we're trying to incorporate more flexibility into us. So if you want to come in as a planner, but then you want to go and do something else and be something else, things change, then that's what we want to try and encourage. I don't know if I've answered your question, Stephen, but I've had a
go. No, I really appreciate it. Thank you. I was also wondering, what sort of things do you guys look for in a CV?
So there's obviously the core stuff around, we will look at, to a certain degree, academic performance, but a lot will come down to kind of the rounded person, and I say this, and I'm slightly wincing as I say it, because it's so hard, the work experience, but crikey, it's hard, isn't it?
Yeah.
We try to do that. Do we have an official program for that? No. And one thing I would say is we have changed. In the past, we were inundated with a client's son or daughter wants to get work experience. Somebody else wants. It's very. It's not very inclusive, that approach. And so we've kind of changed away from that as much as you can. As much as you can turn a client down and turn their son or daughter away, we're trying to make sure that we have a broader representation coming in and experiencing it. But I would just say get work experience in any way. So any place you can, really, to help you get understanding. And it's amazing for starters. We had a case of the day, and you may smile, but we're showing her how to write a letter. Okay, but you may not have written a letter. I suspect you probably haven't written a letter. So, but we actually said you've got to write a letter. There are certain things we don't do many letters. Don't get me wrong. We're not going back to dark ages, but we when you're doing formal proposals or pictures and stuff, sometimes you do. And it's literally where to put the address, in which corner, how it should be structured. It was I'll just share that with you because that was just kind of intriguing. There's old things that you need to learn. There's new things we need to learn from you. So it's one of those. But we are part of our diversity approach as well is to remove, if I'm honest, pictures. I was smiling when you said it. What do we look for on a CV? There isn't much left because you take the pictures off, take the names off, take the age off. So we're left with this slightly sanitized version, but obviously we're doing that for the right reasons. Certainly for kind of up to first kind of interview and selection to try and take away that unconscious bias, which I think is inevitable that it creeps in if we're not careful.
Yeah. And I have another one.
Yeah, keep going, Steve. You're on a roll.
How has your organization supported career building for new professionals during COVID?
Yeah, so that's why the office isn't dead, I'd suggest. We've like all businesses, we've had to adapt to this. It's hard. But, in Bristol, we've had a few graduates start with us during this time. They remember the office from some interview they did probably the year before, but they've never been in. And you learn so much from, traditionally anyway, sitting next to people and picking up on what they're doing and kind of asking queries and what have you. So we think actually that office, in terms of nurturing that next and coaching and bringing people through, is still really vital and really important. And there's no point opening an office and having all the juniors in there and all the experienced ones are sat at home in their 4-bed house looking at their garden out office window, study window. It's no good to us. So this is where this kind of hybrid model, and there's a lot of middle and senior management saying that we can get away without having to have an office, but there's a lot of people that need it. And actually, some of the reasons why I've opened our offices is for our junior people, because they're in a flat share with a laptop in their bedroom, and people walking past the back in their sofa in their pants whilst they're doing a conference call or whatever it is. I'm not joking. These are the things that go on, and they need space to be in, to come into office. And a lot of what we did, looking back to tonight, it's the social side, friendship side, collegiate stuff as well. So to answer your question a bit more specifically, we have actually changed the way we support people. Our induction process has gone pretty well, actually, virtually. And there is a lot we're doing in terms of trying to regular catch-ups and check-ins. We use, like you're doing here, Teams, and that's helpful, but it only goes so far. And we haven't found the solution yet. I don't think anyone has. So I still think that's what's going to drive that collaboration in terms of that kind of, particularly those younger groups. But for us as a business, as agents and buying and selling and information, it's still a people business. So and people still, it's easy if you've got perhaps some solid relationships already that you can just work on. But to build new relationships remotely is quite challenging. And I think it'd be interesting. I think we're going to have as interesting a time, and I say interesting in a kind of maybe difficult, coming out of this as we did going into it. Because if you think about it, we're having this call now. Let's just say we're in a hybrid office environment in the future, and Stephen, you're at home, because it's fine. We allow people to work at home. That's fine, but we've forgotten to dial you in, or you can't get in, or you want to make. We've just had a discussion about what's going to the agenda before the meeting starts, but you weren't in that because you were there 2 o'clock. We got there 5 minutes before and started having a chat. Then the meeting finishes and we go and carry on the conversation at the coffee point. These are the things that actually mean, do you know what? Next time I think I'm going to come into the office for that, because I didn't quite. And I think that's, I'm not saying that's the right thing to do, I'm just saying it's kind of, this is potentially what's going to happen. I'm chatting to one of my bosses the other day, and he was saying, he can't see a situation where if you want to stick yourself away and work at home 4 days a week, then you probably aren't going to progress as fast as others who are in. I mean, that's how it's going to be. I know that there'll be lots of Harvard Business School's reviews and stuff saying, we need to make sure that everyone can still work hybridly and everything else. I don't think we've found the solution yet. So I think people will work that out in the next few years. Good. Got another one, Stephen?
Yeah. How long do you think that it's going to take until it's kind of like mandatory for everyone to come back to the office?
Yeah, that's interesting. So I don't think we'll ever say mandatory. Now, our approach as a business is to say, look, we believe in the office. We think it's vital and it's important, and that connectivity is really important. We don't think there's a future for our staff to stay at home all the time. And there are other businesses that can do that. Although what I would say is interesting, some of those businesses where it's fine, we don't need you to collaborate and connect, or you can do it all remotely, you can work from home. I'd argue some of those are roles which are probably going to get automated anyway. So be careful what you wish for, I suppose, or just keep retraining. But so for us, I think we will be saying working from home all the time is not for us. That's not what we expect. But we'll be very flexible, because at the same time, it has had some real benefits for people. I was playing football at lunchtime with my son in the cul-de-sac, kicking a ball up. Scored an amazing goal, he tells me, but I thought it was all right. But that's a benefit to me that I wouldn't be able to do that. And now I'm talking to you guys, and jump from another meeting to another one digitally. So there's lots of benefits to working from home. It's just kind of getting the balance right. So I don't think we'll go mandatory, but we will have to have a few rules. And as I touched on earlier, I think there's still a lot for firms to work out as to how they make it work. I think if you end up shrinking your office floor plate and then having to stipulate what day you can come in and what day you can't come in, it doesn't sound very flexible to me. So I'm not sure how that's going to really work. And in my experience, if the senior team are in on a Tuesday, everybody else wants to be on a Tuesday. Yeah, because they all want to be seen and spotted. And that's just human nature. So there's lots of psychology here, which I think people are kind of forgetting.
Yeah.
So let's come back to it in a year's time again. Now, come on, someone else has got a question other than Stephen. No, maybe not. Maybe it's just Stephen.
I've got one. Has there been anything you've learned while working in JLL?
No, yeah. Be more specific. What do you mean?
As in, is there something that you can pass on to us, like during your whole career, maybe, not even just JLL?
Yeah. Okay. I would say the power of your network. So, as I said, there are some frustrating people out there who don't learn their technical skills, but then build up a really great network and go and smash it and go way past you in your career progression, because they know who it is, what it is, kind of they're drawing all the dots together. And then there are others that kind of go, actually, as I said earlier, I want to be the best, technically, most amazing, whatever, I know everything. And that's great. But actually, the world doesn't work on perfect. Really a lot of what we do is getting it, we at least, we're not writing the governance, it doesn't have to be perfect. We're trying to get deals done, work with clients, resolve problems, communicate, etc. It's all those aspects to it which are really important. So early on in your career, you should rightly focus on getting qualified, or whichever professional qualifications you think you need, and the business perhaps thinks you need. And there is still quite a reliance on that. I think one of the questions you asked was around, certain roles you don't. It's not mandatory for you to have that as much as perhaps it used to be. So there's a little bit of relaxation there if you're good and you've learned your skills. But it is a badge of honour to say, I've learned this. That's where I start from. That's not where it ends. And then you add, but people can spend too long going from, say, in our structure anyway, say graduate, and then become qualified, become a surveyor, and then become a senior surveyor. By that point, you really should be making sure your connections with clients and consultants and colleagues are as strong as they can be, and you're working with that, because that's what's going to propel your career in the second half, or actually 2/3, the remaining of your career. Then, bulk of it will be around combining the two, and sometimes at that point, so you're in, I don't know, age-wise, you might be in your late 20s, and you're thinking, I want to progress, but actually all you've been doing is you're just really good at writing a planning report. But actually the value to your business is kind of understanding who the clients are and getting relationships, that sort of stuff. So that's probably, that's one that crops up, and I've learned looking back.
Thank you.
So hopefully that's helpful at some point.
Can I ask one more question?
Of course.
What has prepared you to become a project manager?
So my path was, as I think you spotted, I went down building surveying route. I enjoyed building surveying, and it did. Obviously, as part of that, started doing mini projects as part of that, and then I enjoyed the project side more than the professional side, as I'll call it, and so progressed into more and more office fit out. Quite good because they're fast, quick. You got to just and you get a lot of experience. And then I learned from that, and then I wanted to start building some new things out of the ground. So then moved more dedicated into project management, and came out of London to do that actually. So that was quite an. I would say in Bristol, our project management team's got a lot of ex-building surveyors. It's got a lawyer. It's got an architect. It's got a quantity surveyor, structural engineer. So quite varied, but there's quite a lot of building surveyors that flow through into doing project management. But it's not for everyone. That's not. I mean, you can go obviously straight down the PM route. I guess the distinction I make is I found it, and we find it quite good coming from the building surveying side, because you get your own projects that are yours and they're small, but you've got to sort them out. If you make mistakes, they're your mistakes, you fix them, etc., and you learn that way. The alternative is you become an graduate project manager, and you're carrying a bag, metaphorically, for someone, a senior person, and you don't own it. You don't own that project. You're not, you're just kind of, you're seeing some great stuff. That's the flip side. But you don't get so much chance to do it yourself, doing bits of it. So it's kind of, I think there's two routes there. I'm not saying one better than the other. I just think we found it quite good. It has downsides because the building surveyors tend to be a little bit more. I think the future will require more project managers who are building surveying rather than quantity surveying or legal or whatever. We'll probably be refurbishing more buildings than building new ones. So we'll be pushed by tax and carbon to recycle our buildings more than knock them over and put a nice new shiny one, which is really green, but we just knocked over something that we could have reused. And I think there's going to be a stigma in a lot of things we do, in terms of why have you bought a brand new car when you could have bought a second-hand one, or one that's been kind of polished up. I think that's going to be increasingly the future. I don't know if I answered that one.
Thank you. No, you have.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, I don't know if anyone's got any more. I've got one more. Maybe time for one more. I've got another meeting.
I have one more. Unless someone else has a question, then they can. No?
Shout. Okay, go for it, Steve.
I was wondering, how did you climb up the ladder professionally? Did you do a lot of networking, or did you have a mentor to help you with that?
So I'm not sure mentors existed in my day, but they did. But it wasn't something that happened. For me, I think the key turning point was I was a technical building surveyor and project manager in an agent's world. I could have carried on doing that absolutely fine, and that would have been great, and I could have focused on project management and got onto bigger and bigger projects, and that was certainly the path that I was taking. But I also was curious, and I enjoyed the wider parts of the property cycle. So what happened to buying and selling, the investment, all the other aspects to it. And so I rather than just, I did something about that, which is rather than, the prime example would be, I decided to join an external organisation that wasn't related to what I did. So I could have joined the Faculty of Building, okay? And that's fine. I was a member of Faculty of Building, FBE, but I chose to then join British Council of Officers. So I then got onto the committee with the BCO regionally, and there's a load of agents, architects, and then there's me. So I'm then suddenly learning. I'm out of my comfort zone, but I'm learning. And then I became the chair of that organisation, started presenting and whatever else. And then the market gets to see you, and your employees get to see you as someone who's not just a project manager. You're also kind of looking at other areas, and you're kind of widening your path. So I suppose it's that's how I did it. I suppose my advice would be to stay curious and keep investing in different options to keep your options open, because you're never quite sure which route you might want to go. And if you do that, then by its very nature, more opportunities will come your way, because you're in a position to take them if you want to. Yeah. All right.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Hope that was helpful.
Yeah, it's been quite insightful.
Good. All right. Well, I look forward to seeing you guys around. Yeah. As we open up. And in due course, by all means, drop me a line and stuff, and I can see if I can help. As I can't promise, because we have so many different inquiries and stuff around the work experience bit. But if there are some opportunities, then it'd be great to try and support you on that path. You're in the right place. You're doing the right things, and you're asking the right questions. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's been a bit over time, but that was great.
Sorry, say again?
Oh, sorry. I just said we went a bit over time, but thank you so much for answering all the questions.
No, that's okay. Don't worry. I'm going to bounce into another meeting now. That's fine. It's good to see you all. Have a good enjoy your studies.
Good day.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Guys. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.